I'd like to call the village board meeting to order for Tuesday, November 26, 2024. Roll call, please.
President Kradowski,
Here.
Trustee Service,
Here.
Trustee Paul,
Here.
Trustee Zerbal, excused, Trustee Atkinson,
Here.
Trustee Krieger,
Here.
Trustee Flukie.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remember all the men and women that we have throughout the world in uniform. I have no changes to the agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have one quick question. Is there anybody here for 10J, nuisance ordinance? Okay, then leave it the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Number 5, action on the minutes 5A of November 12, 2024, Joint Finance and Personnel Committee and Village Board.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. 5B, consider act on the minutes of the October 8th, 2024 Village Board meeting.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. 5C, consider, discuss, act on the minutes of the October 22nd, 2024 Village Board meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed. Motion carried. Number 6, comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state your name and address, limited to 5 minutes. The board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. Is there anybody who would like to comment on anything not on tonight's agenda? Okay, could you come up to the front, state your name and address, please, for the record?
Oh, it is on the agenda.
Oh, I'm so.
Okay.
Barbara Menz, 1430 Ponderosa Avenue.
I'm gonna pull the microphone closer to you so we can hear you.
Thank you.
Barbara Menz, 1430 Ponderosa Avenue.
Okay,
I'm coming to this evening on behalf of the Pioneer Waterford Park neighborhood. For two and a half years ago, I brought up our concern with the village trustee about the safety concerns crossing Packerland on, between 172 and Wabi. There is nowhere for us to pass. There is no crosswalk for us to cross. We have businesses, we have a very nice walking, biking path that the village has invested in on the west side of the road. We all live on the east side of the road, and we cannot safely make it across to the other side. You have just done huge improvements to Waterford Park play area. You have people that live on the west side who would like to come over to the east side, and there's not a safe place for them to cross. That's 4 lanes, it's fast moving, and we have to cross at our own risk. The village has installed numerous signals in the village for safe crossing on other streets. That's all we're asking, is to have safe crossing for us to get to the other side. I had sent emails, I got a reply saying that the main reason, I went to the bike and pedestrian meeting and discussed my concerns. And they said it did come up with you, and the concern was that a study won't be done until you know exactly where it's going to go. Please make that decision. Paulson would be a great place. At least there is already an intersection there. And the neighborhood in there, I feel very safe walking down Babcock and getting to Paulson and walking. It's not a busy street. We don't need sidewalks everywhere. We just need a way to get across Packerland. And it would be greatly appreciated if you would do that. Conversation with the neighbors, just out walking the day that I went out and decided to assert myself. everyone was in agreement. That's like, yeah, that's not a nice place to go. And we would like to, and there's times we want to walk to a restaurant instead of getting in the car. I don't feel safe doing that. We would really appreciate you doing something to make it a safer crossing, even if it's painting a crosswalk for now until you decide. But something needs to be done. It's been over 2 years. This can't keep being put off. Please don't wait until somebody gets hurt. And then it's like, we should have done something. Then it's a little late. You need to do it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, would you like to come up, state your name and address for the record, and tell us your concern?
Okay. My name is Sarah Drager. I live at 1054 Shadow Lane. My concern is the Arena Motel. My daughter was stalked by someone originally that lived there. He started when she was 14 that he saw her. Probably 10 years ago, I think it was Fox 11, did a whole news thing on it about the concerns of the Arena Motel, having probably at that time around 11, now there's 15 sex offenders there. So the concerning thing is like being a prime location, number one, and there's 15 pedophilers, and of course my daughter ended up being, a victim of being stalked by one. The weekend before we caught him was the state volleyball tournament. Tons of girls are walking past that motel to go to their Airbnbs. Very concerning. A lot of Airbnbs also in our neighborhood, and some kids just right across the street too. There's a teenager that helps like for Packer games, things like that. And I feel like, okay, now she's a target too. So we were able to catch the guy. He did confess. He did admit that yes, he was at the Arena Motel when he first saw and met her. Temptation. So when I've tried to call the Arena Motel, when the Green Bay Police Department tried to go to the Arena Motel, nobody was in the office. Nobody could answer any questions or ask about the names that he had called her on the letters. He left about 5 sex books in all of this, and disgusting letters to her, sexual too. Then he was later found at Econo Lodge, where they also have a lot there. So it is very concerning that, number one, there's no, even when he was walking back, there was no traffic cameras either. I don't know where to go from here to petition for what can we do about making that intersection, that prime location, a safer place for kind of being in the area of the Rush Center, the whole Packer thing, and the bars too.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak on anything not on tonight's agenda? Anybody who would like to speak on anything not on tonight's agenda? Okay, moving on. Number 7, written communications or announcements. We have recognition of recently promoted public safety supervisors. This is the fun part of our meeting all the time. Nick, it's the Nick show now.
All right, well, thank you for allowing us to take this time to briefly recognize a couple of our outstanding employees who have received promotion in the last few months. First one I'll take is Captain Kyle Kabaki. All right, so this is Kyle. He's been with our agency for about 12 years. He's been a supervisor for the past 2 years. Was recently promoted from lieutenant to captain. Kyle's been involved with the field training program for our department for about the last 7 years. And now, since he's been promoted, he has now taken over as a field training supervisor. And due to a recent retirement, Kyle's taken on a great amount of work related to fire operations with our department. He's filling a big gap with that that was left because of the retirement. He's doing a great job with that so far. Kyle assists with scheduling and delivering fire training as an emergency services instructor. And he also assists with maintenance and setup of our fire vehicle fleet as well as fire equipment, which he spends a lot of time on shift doing that as well. Kyle's also a liaison with our paid on-call staff and coordinates their training And if that wasn't enough, Kyle also serves as a cadet advisor to mentor the next generation of public safety officers and emergency responders. So congratulations, Kyle, on your promotion. And I believe his wife, Caitlin, will be pinning on his badge. Caitlin, if you want to come up.
I would be.
So you're giving her lots of space.
A little bit of blood never hurt anybody.
Yay.
Kyle, stay up here. Kyle, you stay up here. All right, the next victim is Eric Para. If you could come up. All right, Eric has been with our agency for 15 years, 11 of which he has been working as a paramedic. Eric was promoted, I think July, so it's been a little bit of a delay getting him up here, but we finally were able to do that. Eric's had numerous roles with our department the last 15 years. He's been a firearms instructor, a fire instructor, field training officer, honor guard member, and a cadet advisor, and has also spent, I think it was 6 years with Mobile Field Force, which is a county-wide team related to protesting and riots. So, as a supervisor, like I said, Eric's been as a supervisor now for a few months, and he's already well on his way and getting to work with crime prevention programs, public education, and he's sunk a lot of time in peer support, which is something new with our agency the last year or so. He's done a great job with that. So congratulations, Eric, and his wife Stephanie will be pinning on his badge.
That was quick.
We made quick work of that.
They must have practiced.
All right, now it's your turn to talk. You didn't know there was going to be a speech here, did you? All right, obviously you're already sworn officers, but anytime we do a promotion, we'd like to just reaffirm your oath of honor. So with that, you're going to raise your right hand for me and repeat after me. On my honor, I will never betray my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions. I will always maintain the highest ethical standards and uphold the values of my community and the agency I serve. All right, congratulations, guys.
Congratulations, Kyle and Eric. Great to have you in your positions. Know you'll do a great job. Okay, now everybody can stay for the rest of the meeting if they want to. So we're going to get into the consent agenda. No, everybody leave.
All gone.
Everybody's leaving.
That looks like,
It really
More
is a
normal.
fun meeting.
that's what I figured.
Okay, number 8 is action on the consent agenda. 8A is consider, discuss, act on a Class B beer, Class B liquor license exception request for Pope's Pizza, LLC DBA Pope's Pizza. B, consider, discuss, act on a regular, not exception, Class B beer, Class B liquor license request for Cowboy Max Country Club, LLC DBA Cowboy Max Country Club. 8C, consider, discuss, act on a Class B beer, Class B liquor license exception request for Fire and Fur Event Hall, LLC, DBA Fire and Fur Event Hall. D, consider, discuss, act on the non-renewal of the Class B beer, Class B liquor license for Tahine Mexican Grill VR LLC DBA Tajin Mexican Grill. E, consider, discuss, act on the non-renewal of the Class B beer license of Sips and Scribbles LLC. F, consider, discuss, act on budgeted expenditures for period between 10/17/2024 to 11/20/2024. G, receive and accept October 2024 investment report. H, receive and accept October 2024 financial statements. I, receive and accept November 2024 Public Works Department report. And J, receive and accept November 2024 Parks, Rec, and Forestry Department report.
Move to approve.
Second.
Accept it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as presented. Anybody have anything they want to pull to discuss?
Can we pull 8A, please? Just have a couple quick questions on it.
8A,
Yes.
okay. So, we're gonna vote on all of them except 8A. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Okay, 8A, Tracy.
Okay, I just wanted a clarification on where the liquor and beer can be. So it sounds like it can go in the parking lot and the driveway when Lambeau Field and Resch Center events are going on. Is that correct? So that's available. And does the road also have to be closed as well for them to have it in the parking lot and the driveway? Is that all together?
Yes, according to how it was approved, if it's, that's how it was applied and agreed. So if it is approved tonight, that they are during any road closures authorized by the Chief of Public Safety. Yes.
Okay, so it would have to be a Lambeau event and the road closed, or expo event and the road closed for them to be able to go in the parking lot and the driveway then?
So the road doesn't have to be closed if it's just for a Resch Center event or a Lambeau Field event. But if there's a road closure by the Chief of Public Safety, that also can include them selling outside as well.
Okay,
So inherently, automatically, just Resch events and Lambeau Field events. Any other road closures, then they can as well.
okay, so it's any of those three things, one of those three
Yeah,
things
right,
then would
exactly.
be able to have it in the parking lot and the driveway.
Yes.
Is that similar to all of our bars in the area? They all have that same rule? So it's consistent in the area? Do you know?
Not necessarily. I think there's, well, I think Titletown is a little bit different in the sense of when that extension can be applied. So if there's events approved by the Chief of Public Safety for Titletown, expanded way beyond Lambeau Field, then that can be. But the remainder of them are authorized to sell.
So
Well,
the
according
oth-
to the license
I
right
just-
now, how their license is right now.
Okay, so all the licenses right now are very similar in their verbiage for like the bar and Stadium View, that they also, when the road's closed or a Lambeau event or a Resch event, then they can have it in the parking lot in their driveways.
I don't believe that's specific for those three.
Okay,
I think every licensed operator has a different premise description based on their request.
okay,
Generally speaking, licensed premise, so Titletown as an example, they have an extension on their normally licensed premise outside of an event is confined to an area. When there are events, then they can extend that out of that area. And so how it's written into each premise description and license may be different based on the nature and need of that operator and what's agreeable and approved by the village board.
okay,
So it doesn't necessarily require consistency between operator
Operator A and B.
operator B.
okay,
It's a matter of how that operation is desired to be run by the operator and what's agreeable and approvable by the village board.
okay. So everyone may be slightly different as far as what they're asking, so this isn't consistent with all of the bars up there.
Yeah, some operators may, employ tents and things of that nature and kind of have this outdoor beer garden under certain circumstances, whether it be a Packer game or a Resch Center event or some other kind of special event road closure, so they may desire to have that. Other operators may say, we're not gonna set up anything outside in support of these events. We're gonna continue to operate kind of status quo and have
Inside.
or, drinking activities or alcoholic type of business activities inside under their normal premise.
Okay. Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
You know, one of the things, Tracy, that I wanted to say is that there's a lot of the establishments around here that they will only have their parking lot, a portion of their parking lot licensed during a Packer game, you know, so each one is specifically different,
Okay,
you know, for what they want.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so do we need a motion to?
Move to approve. Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve 8A as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Motion carried. Okay, number 9, public hearings. Public hearing on ordinance 011-4-24 regarding a final planned unit development PUD request for a multi-use senior residential development at 460 Marina Lane, parcel VA-132-13. Aaron?
All right, thank you. As noted, this is a final planned unit development public hearing, and I will share my screen just to give some background on the project. The requested public hearing is for this property along Marina Lane and South Broadway. As depicted, there are 3 separate phases to the project, including a community-based residential facility, or CBRF, in the area here closest to Broadway. 6 attached townhome units closest to the river on the far east side of the property, and then apartment building here, 5-story development. This is a 55-plus senior living development. The requested planned unit development would overlay a B3 community business zoning district. The planned unit development is necessary to accommodate the diversity of uses on the property. What I'll do is, once we get through the public hearing, we get to the action item, I'll provide some additional details and list through the recommended conditions of approval.
Okay, is there anybody here that would like to speak for or against this item? This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Public hearing is closed. 9B, public hearing on a conditional use permit, CUP request for automobile sales at Packerland Tire, 2660 Packerland Drive, parcel VA-228-8-508. Aaron?
Thank you. Similar to the last one, I'll provide a brief overview of the request by sharing my screen. And let's see. Oh, there we go. Got it. All right. The request is for a conditional use permit for auto sales for 4 vehicles for sale at the highlighted property for Packerland Tire and Auto. The property is zoned I-1 light industry, and vehicle sales are a conditional use under that zoning district. Once we get to the action item, I'll list through some recommended conditions to be attached to the conditional use permit.
Okay, is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this item? This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this item? I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. 9C, public hearing on 2025 Village of Ashwaubenon proposed budget.
Yes, public hearing for the budget. We met on November 12th as a joint village board and finance personnel committee to review the 2025 proposed budget. Went through without any adjustments. We did have some time for questioning. Just had a few items that we talked through, but overall the meeting went well. And the final levy through that, it would remain the same as last year at $14,080,809, and it is a balanced budget.
Okay. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against the budget? Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against the budget for 2025? Hearing none, I need a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, 10 action items. 10A, consider, discuss, act on ordinance 011-4-24 regarding a final planned unit development PUD request for a multi-use senior residential development at 460 Marina Lane, parcel VA-132-13. Aaron.
All right, thank you. I will share my screen again. And, all right, as discussed during the public hearing introduction, the requested planned unit development or final planned unit development is for a multi-use senior residential development at 460 Marina Lane. The property is currently zoned B3 community business. The planned unit development would allow for the multiple uses as indicated in the application, including a community-based residential facility or CBRF, 6 attached townhome units, and there are 124 unit senior apartment building, 5-story. Apartment building is located here, closest to Marina Lane. Again, the townhomes furthest east, and the CBRF closest to South Broadway. There's an internal driveway system with internal parking and also covered parking underneath the apartment building. Driveway access to development, as noted, is to be from Broadway. There will need to be coordination with Brown County Highway Department to provide access, as well as connection through the Boulevard median, as you see here, and then also to Marina Lane here to the south. As the property is within Airport Zone C and greater than 50 feet in height, will require approval from the Austin Straubel International Airport Director as well. The property is to be phased, with phase 1 being the CBRF. Quickly thereafter, phase 2 townhomes, and then phase 3 will be the apartments, with the timelines as identified in the staff report. Exterior materials of all the buildings include a mixture of stone veneer, brick, vertical board, and batten siding, and asphalt shingle roof, all of which do meet our site plan design review requirements. In terms of screening, certainly all mechanicals will be screened as also required under our site plan design review ordinance. The preliminary planned unit development was recommended for approval of staff conditions by the village board back at the August village board meeting. The site plan review committee and plan commission have also unanimously recommended approval of the final PUD with staff conditions. What I'll do is I'll run through the staff conditions of approval. As the apartment building is greater than 50 feet tall and with an airport zoning district C, the applicant must obtain an approved height permit from the Green Bay Austin Straubel Airport Director. All parking areas, landscape islands, and drive areas are to have curbing, either conventional, curb pan, or rolled. Screen any rooftop or ground-mounted mechanical units visible from the property boundaries or South Broadway or Marina Lane rights-of-way. Maintain a minimum of 3-foot masonry wainscot from finished grade where metal wall panels are to be used on the apartment building. Use of fully concealed fasteners for exterior wall panels. Include a sidewalk along the south side of the drive lane from South Broadway, a connection from the southerly CBRF sidewalk to the South Broadway sidewalk, and include a sidewalk along the west side of the drive lane from Marina Lane. Just for point of reference, that would include connection from the CBRF here to Broadway, sidewalk along the south side of this drive lane that you see here, and a connection to the south along this drive lane here to Marina Lane. Indicate the fenced courtyard on the site plan for the CBRF. Work with a qualified environmental consultant to remain in compliance with the DNR voluntary party liability exemption for closed case number through utility taps, construction, and restoration. Meet all applicable requirements of the Ashwaubenon site plan review and all other applicable village ordinances. From engineering, submit erosion control and drainage plans for review, contain pre and post construction sheet drain on the site for the northerly and easterly parts of development for the stormwater plan for the property. Revise the grading plan to depict the rough grading of the trail easement on the west side of the storm pond to ready for trail installation. We have had discussions with the developer since the staff report was submitted we're working through some alternatives for location of that trail. So I'd like to amend that recommended condition, basically to allow staff to continue working with the developer to properly site the proposed trail. Item number 12, coordinate the 2 water and 2 sanitary lateral taps with Al Farver per the note on the plans. From stormwater management, complete maintenance on the stormwater pond, including trash, sediment, vegetation removal, etc. Review the contours depicted in the southeast corner of the site to verify they match the existing contours. Relocate the private hydrant to the interior parking lot island at the northeast corner of the apartment building. Coordinate with Ashwaubenon Public Safety on locations for fire fittings and key boxes. Forestry recommended approving the landscape plan as submitted. And from Bike and Ped, include a detail consistent with the standards of the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals for the bicycle parking at the northwest corner of the apartment building. As noted, Site Plan Review Committee and Plan Commission did recommend approval of the final PUD with staff conditions. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, the development team is also in the audience if you have questions specifically for them.
Has anybody got any questions?
No, I think it's a really good project, and I'll make the motion to approve the final PUD for the multi-use senior resident development at 460 Marina Lane.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the final planned unit development request, ordinance 011-4-24. Any other comments?
Yes, under discussion, just a couple questions. I talked to Aaron about this earlier today. I think the development looks really good. I'm really excited about the sidewalks that are in on the south side of the road coming in on Broadway, and then the fact that there is one on the north side where the CBRF that you can walk all the way around that building, which is great. And then having the sidewalk continue down to Marina Way on the west side of the driveway. My questions or little concerns with it is I would love to see a sidewalk also on the east side of the road that goes down to Marina Way, because you have all those apartments there, and there's nowhere for them to walk along the east side of the road. They'll have to cross over to the west side. And we're talking about senior development with maybe mobility challenges, hearing challenges, maybe sight challenges, and to keep a sidewalk close to the building where they're living, I think would be a benefit to them. Getting out to Marina, I know talking to Aaron again, one of the things we'd like to see in the future is a sidewalk along Marina as well to get people safely up to Broadway into the sidewalk. The other thing I was wondering about is there's going to be a trail eventually along the river. Either it'll be on the river or it may be directly behind the townhomes, depending on where the location of that path ends up. There is no access point in that development for someone to get to that trail. For someone to get to that trail, they would have to go out to Marina, come back, and then be able to get on that trail. So I would like to see somewhere in that development that the residents that are within the development itself can get to that trail directly out of the residence instead of having to leave and go out onto Marina to be able to get to that path. I think it's just important, again, with the population that will be served there to have a easier access for them to go. The other concern I know the developer had that Aaron mentioned was the concern of the trail being directly behind the townhouses and maybe not as appealing to maybe potential residents. But, you know, Kelly lives right on the trail, just south a bit. Trail is right there. It just creates great access, I think. And then when you go to Alden Station, again, it's right behind those homes, and I think the people really like it there. So maybe the concerns with moving it towards the river may not be as necessary. They might like it. It might be a selling point. But then also having it on the river, it's more beautiful out there, and people can see the river better. So those are my comments on the development. Like I said, I think it's a good development. I like the development. I think we need that in our community for the seniors. I just would really like to see a little bit more safe access for the seniors and the people that live in that development. And being able to get to that path directly, and then also having a sidewalk on the apartment side of the Marina Road.
Okay. Just thinking this through a little bit, this would be my question. If you have access to that trail from that development, is that going to encourage people to come down there, park in the development, and then go on to the trail? That would be my concern if I were purchasing one of those townhomes. So, anyway, that would be my only concern with that item, so.
You know, the other concern I got, if you want sidewalks on the east side of Marina Way, there's so many driveways and roads coming in and out of there. You're gonna be up and down curbs all the time. So if it's on the west side, you only got 2 driveways, much more safer.
Can you pull that up? I thought there was no driveways, it's just some patios type things, I think, that go out there, if I remember. Maybe I looked at that wrong.
That's accurate. So one of the issues with the adding sidewalk onto the east side of that drive lane is that the location of the patios for the apartments is right now, it's right basically up against that drive lane.
Right.
To install a sidewalk on there, you'd have to actually somehow shift the entire building further to the east, which of course then impacts the layout for the parking lot. It gets up tight against some of the setbacks as well. So that's one of the kind of the rationale for that, and one of the reasons why we thought having it on the west side would provide that safe access, recognizing you have to cross a driveway, but we thought it might be a good alternative.
Well, and is the road, I think, Aaron, you had said the road is 12-foot lanes each direction?
That's correct.
Could that be slimmed down to 10-foot lanes? Rather than a 12-foot lane? Because it's a driveway basically, and to slow people down a little bit in there too. It's not so wide.
So that would get us a 4-foot sidewalk, which of course we know isn't
It's
optimal.
substandard, yeah.
Yeah.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that a cul-de-sac?
Marina Lane is a cul-de-sac, correct.
So
And
there's
then,
not through traffic going through there.
no, and those aren't public streets, those are drive lanes. Those are internal drive lanes for the development.
Right.
Okay. But our ordinances don't require any of that, correct?
What we require is internal access for pedestrian access, which they have provided sidewalks to accommodate that.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. You know, we've got the concerns from Tracy. Do we have any other concerns, questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. 10B, consider, discuss, act on a conditional use permit, CUP, request for automobile sales at Packerland Tire, 2660 Packerland Drive, parcel VA-228-8-508. Aaron?
All right, I will share my screen again, just to bring up the map depicting the area for the conditional use permit. There we go. As indicated, the request of conditional use permit is for Packerland Tire and Auto on Packerland Drive, as indicated with the red highlighted area there. Under our code, they are allowed to have up to 2 cars for sale without a conditional use permit. He is requesting to have up to 4 cars for sale at any one time as a maximum number. In terms of our requirements for vehicle sales, that should be included as conditions on the permit. There should be not have more than 1 vehicle display pad for every 100 feet of street frontage. The vehicle display pad may be elevated up to 2 feet above adjacent displays or grade level. Have no racks that tilt vehicles in any way to show the underside unless located inside a showroom. not display vehicles or other similar items on top of a building, have no outdoor speaker or public address system that is audible off-site, display no other materials for sale between the principal structure and the street, and not test drive vehicles on residential streets. Furthermore, Mr. Claremont, the owner of Packerland Tire, has indicated the following on the conditional use permit that should be included as additional conditions should the CUP be approved. Have for sale no more than 4 vehicles at any one time. Locate the vehicles for sale around the northeast corner of the building as indicated in the application, and not perform any vehicle body work such as industrial painting or salvage reconditioning. Planning Commission did recommend approval on a 3-to-1 vote. Discussion primarily centered around additional parking that may be necessary to accommodate the up to four dedicated spaces for vehicle sales. Mr. Claremont indicated he does have access to the property further to the south here. This is all owned by the same ownership group, including his building, for additional spaces should those become necessary. I don't believe Mr. Claremont is here tonight. He was out of the country. I'm not sure, maybe he had travel issues. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them to the best of my ability.
I additionally had a conversation with them, and their intention is really not to have 4 cars sitting there all the time. All that they do is occasionally they get in a vehicle that the person doesn't want to continue, they're repairing it. The person basically says, look, I'm not going to spend the money on this vehicle. They end up buying it from them. They end up repairing it, and then they put it up for sale. They don't even anticipate he's going to have 4 cars all the time, but he wants that ability to go up to 4. So I don't really see any issue with this, especially since not even a half a block away, there's auto sales going on. So I would move to approve this,
I'll
approve the
second it.
CUP.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit. Under discussion, I have to say that I voted no on this at Plan Commission. I'm going to vote no tonight for the simple fact that I guess I'm tarnished with what happened with another conditional use permit that we gave to somebody about car sales, and it never ends up being what is anticipated, so.
Mary, I know what you're saying, and we know what we're talking about, the junkyard around the corner there.
Yep.
And I agree, but I think they run a pretty clean operation here, knowing what they do. But you're right, the other property is
Yes.
terrible.
Are they a licensed dealer?
They have a wholesale license right now.
They have a wholesale license.
Correct.
Are they going to be,
If this gets approved, then they're going to.
so it will be licensed through the state of Wisconsin if this
Yes.
goes through?
Yep, it will.
Okay,
We actually sign off on that permit when it comes through.
perfect, and I have no concerns.
Okay, so any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. 10C, consider, discuss, act on resolution R 11-3-24, adopting the Village of Ashwaubenon 2025 budget. Before I have Greg talk about the budget, again, I'm going to say that it was a tough budget, a very tough budget. We could have added a lot of money to our levy. It would have really raised the taxes, and our residents are getting hit with, costs that we're getting hit with the higher water and the higher sewer and the higher stormwater. So we chose not to do that, and we did not raise the taxes, but our equalized value did change by 12%. So it was a very difficult budget. Again, I'd like to thank every one of the department heads for all the work you did. Nobody got everything they wanted. A lot of people didn't get anything that they wanted. So, but thank you very much for what you've done, because it was a very, very difficult budget. Okay, now you can talk, Greg. It's the Greg Show.
Sure, I'll keep it short. So this resolution, per the public hearing, is going to adopt the 2025 annual budget and establish the property tax levy of $14,080,809. Again, we did not raise our tax levy from the prior year, and as Mary alluded to, it was a very challenging budget to get to that point. So that's what this resolution is doing. If you want to discuss anything further, we can. But I think most of us understand all the factors that came into play with this budget.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R11-3-24.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution R11-3-24. Any discussion?
Yep, under discussion, just, again, with the comment that was made at public, or the beginning, with the Packerland crossing. I know there's no money in here for doing a study or doing anything to kind of move that forward. I would like to see that. The other thing is the bicycle and pedestrian plan really needs to be updated. It was done originally in 2009, and to hire a consultant to do that and get that plan up to date. The community has changed immensely since 2009, so I think we need to get a consultant to do that. So I would like to see those items addressed in some manner in the budget for 2025.
Okay, I do have the paper that's on my desk says that it's from the bike and ped comp plan from 2018.
Yeah, it's been updated twice since 2029, but I think it needs to be, and that was in-house that they updated it, so I think just with all the changes in the community, it probably needs to be updated by a consultant and really look at it again, the whole community. Things have changed. I mean, if you just look up the road here, up Holmgren, all the residential, I think I'm going the wrong way, that's changed that. Marina, we just talked about Marina and, wanting to get a sidewalk on Marina Way. So there's just been a lot of changes, and I think it just needs to have someone, a consultant that specializes in bicycle and pedestrian and traffic safety to look at it and see where we're at and update it so it's current to what our community is now and what we need in the future.
Is there something that the Bike and Ped Committee could do with the comp plan? Because that's what I anticipated that was their role also.
They certainly can look at it, but I think the knowledge, to have someone that has that knowledge to really look at things and make a plan that has probably more expertise to it than the Bike and Pedestrian Committee could come up with, I think is important. No different than Packerland and a safe crossing for Packerland. I think we need to have a consultant to do that. I believe we're having a consultant do the ones on Cormier and Holmgren because staff-wise, and Brian, please correct me on this, does not feel comfortable doing the engineering on that, and I think Packerland is the same, and the bike ped plan as well. At some point, you have to hire someone, just like when we did the study for this building in this area, we hired a consultant to do it because we felt internally we didn't have the staff or the time to be able to do it. And I think the bike ped plan is there as well.
Okay. Any other comments about, I'm going to say right now, straight up, I won't change the levy to hire a consultant for that. So
Could we take some out of the fund balance?
Well, we could, what we could do,
I know
Tracy, it was suggested to take out the 25,000 for the painting on South Point. So maybe that's something we could.
The bike ped plan, the bike committee wanted that, so I'm not, that came through them.
Right, and that's
so.
why I wanted to leave that in there.
Absolutely.
Is because of that, so.
Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can just add a little bit to the conversation. So to answer Tracy's question, theoretically, yes, the board could take unassigned fund balance from that, I would encourage the board only to do that for those singular one-time expenses so that you're not creating an unfunded liability or a structural imbalance in the budget year over year. In this case, that would be a one-time funded project to support the recreation, if you will, or the complete overhaul or comprehensive update to the plan document itself. Or if it's gonna go towards the actual engineering, study, planning, and design of a crossing at Packerland, they could certainly do that as well. What I wouldn't want it to do is obviously fund like a position or something like that that creates that structural liability to the village. So the board can certainly make that decision. If the board desires to do that, that's certainly within your prerogative. That would, what I would encourage you to do is, because this is kind of at the moment when you're adopting your final resolution, where our backs are somewhat against the wall from a timing standpoint to adopt a budget to meet statutory timeline for that, and then also adopt the levy for next year. What I would encourage the board to do is adopt the budget tonight if it's agreeable as presented, because you are under that timeline. If the board desires to bring back these items in the future to talk more earnestly about them, then what I would encourage you to do is adopt a resolution amending the budget, okay? So even though you would adopt the budget tonight, you still have the ability to come in next month and amend the very budget that you adopted. The only thing you wouldn't be able to do is change the tax levy, because you would adopt the tax levy, okay? So I don't want to discourage the board's ability to adopt the budget tonight so that we can meet our statutory requirements for timing. But I also want to make sure that the board is aware that you can amend the budget at any time throughout that fiscal period, or even shortly thereafter the fiscal period, based on the activities that the village has undertaken for that given year. As it relates to the bike and ped plan, this was an item that was discussed at committee. There has been some efforts to do an update to the plan, not a comprehensive overhaul of the overall plan. The effort was to utilize Brown County Planning to assist in that. They are considered the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Brown County, and they can assist in those plans. Back dating to June or July of this past year, they had stated that they would be able to assist us in doing an update. Again, not a comprehensive overhaul, but it's also been just brought to my attention as of very recently that a key staff member from Brown County is planning to retire. So that could jeopardize the county's department's ability to even conduct the update. So that's an item that, again, is as of, I think, last week, Thursday or Friday, that we became aware of that situation. So we'll have to analyze what the best approach is. I guess my recommendation for the board is that if the board wants to review both of these items in earnest, then I would certainly send it back to committee. Committee can kind of formulate what that strategy is. Is it an update? Is it a comprehensive overhaul? Are we putting in a crosswalk? Do we really need to study where the crosswalk should go? Should the committee kind of just say, this is where it should go based on need, and then have an engineer come in and design it? That's going to be somewhat similar to what we're seeing on Holmgren and Cormier, where the engineer is really designing the crosswalk or the crossing. They're not necessarily looking per se at exactly where it should go. They're gonna rely on us to kind of tell them this is the preferred location, and then they'll run and do an engineered study to confirm that that's a valid location to place the crosswalk. So they're not gonna come in and say, well, we'll figure out where it should go. You tell us where you think you want it, and then we'll analyze to ensure that it meets certain safety requirements when the design is created.
You know, I think we should just approve the budget as we did. Forget about this thing, do it internally to find out where we're going, and worry about it in 25. You know, we're fooling around with something here that's kind of, in my opinion, very minor. It's something that doesn't need to take up this time at a board meeting. We've got a budget here that we all approved. The staff spent a lot of time on it. We're spending a lot of time on something I don't think is necessary at this point to change the budget or amend anything at this meeting right now. So we've got a first and a second on it. Let's just approve the budget as is and forget about it.
Okay, the one comment I do have to make, and Tracy, I understand why you want to have this put into the budget, but I sat through every one of those budget meetings with every department head sitting at that table, and they all had to give stuff up. So I cannot amend the budget and take money out of fund balance for this when every one of those department heads have given up something that's very important to them also. So with that, I'm just gonna call the question and,
Mary, I agree with you 100% on what you
So-
said there. Let's get this thing done with.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution R 11-2-20, no, that's not it. R 11-3-24, accepting the budget as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And then I would can I make a motion to send this back to Bike and Ped then, please?
To send,
Send the bike plan and Packerland back to Bike Ped committee.
Sending the budget back, Tracy?
No.
Okay.
Send the bike plan and Packerland back to Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee to look into it further. Not the budget,
Right,
just the
right.
idea of the bicycle
think-
pedestrian plan and looking at Packerland. Send it back to Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee to look into further.
I think probably the best procedure would to do is if staff could create an agenda item for that specific committee rather than referring it back. So staff does have direction to, because there's no agenda item to
Okay.
send back to. So create a separate agenda item for the committee fresh, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
okay, thank you. Okay, 10D, consider, discuss, act on resolution R 11-2-24, authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $2.890 million general obligation promissory note series 2024C. Greg Wenholz. This is a tough day for this, Greg, because we have never had to borrow for equipment. That's how difficult these budgets have become.
Right, so this is an extension or a part of the budget that was approved. These are capital projects that came out of our CIP plan and were into the budget, at different parts of the budget. So we need to do a debt issuance to help cover some of the costs, and you're right. Some of the bigger items in here that we've never had to deal with are equipment, fire truck and some dump trucks and a loader. The costs of these pieces of equipment have doubled, if not tripled, over the last 10 years, to the point that they're just, they've overwhelmed our vehicle replacement fund, and so we're just need to replenish some of that money through a bond issue, and then hopefully when these are being replaced, we'll have built up the fund balances as needed through.
Greg, you said about three years or so you can take care of that to get it to where we do have that funded then?
Yeah, that's our plan.
Okay.
We have another, in the CIP, there's another fire truck, and then in a couple of years, it's gonna be a really large expenditure as well, so. So this is the debt issue. The other projects in here are Cormier Road sidewalk, from Ridge Road to Shady Lane. Public Works Garage HVAC replacement, it's kind of an emergency replacement. I know we're doing a study with the village facilities. This is something that just can't wait. And then some continuation and finalization of the EAB removal, and those were items that were brought up the budget. So Brad Vigut from R.W. Baird is here to kind of discuss again the process of issuance and the timelines and the dates and everything that's happening. And so I'll let him present this to the board. There's an attachment in the agenda item that he'll be going through and go through the timeline and the summary of the financing.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Yeah, just in terms of a timeline, we're following, or the village is following the same process it's used in the past for issuing debt. So on your agenda tonight is a resolution that approves a narrow set of parameters, and once those parameters are met, the debt can be issued outside of a village board meeting. So those parameters include a not to exceed interest rate of 5%, not to exceed issue size, a not to exceed issuance cost, and the other parameter is dollar amount that each individual principal payment can change at the time we lock in. So that's to meet the debt structuring goals of the village. This note is repaid over a 15-year period. The only component of the note that is amortized over 15 years is the fire truck. That's because it's a longer-lived asset. All this other equipment and other capital projects is repaid over a 10-year period. We just combine this into one note for cost efficiencies. We've started the process, Baird and village staff, of preparing the disclosure documents. We're gonna secure a bond rating again from Moody's. That rating should be available Monday. Don't expect a change to the village's rating of AA2. Baird would market this obligation. We would plan we'd market it nationwide to investors. We've got penciled in right now December 10th to finalize all of the rates and the terms and execute what's called the certificate of purchaser. So that's the document that really finalizes the terms of the notes. And then this would close before year end. We've got a closing date of December 30th. So I've included the estimated, I should say, based on current market conditions, the estimated interest rate is 3.97. I'm a little conservative on that. If this were locked in today, it'd probably be closer to a 360, 365. But we left enough room in the parameters so we can get this done, that if rates would move up a little bit, we can go out as high as 5% if we need to. Anything higher than that, though, we need to come back to the board for approval. I included a detailed amortization schedule on the last page of the attachment. And I would just point out there, you can see the split between the fire truck repayment of 15 years and all the other capital being repaid over a 10-year period. So I can answer questions if you like or go into more detail.
The one thing that I wanted to mention, this isn't a question for you, Brad, but I just want to make sure that the board is aware that the sidewalk on Cormier is replacement of some of the cakes of sidewalk that are bad. It's not putting a whole new sidewalk, correct? Am I correct? Yeah, thanks, Brian.
How far, is this the whole sidewalk we're talking about, the whole length of the sidewalk, or just repairs within it?
Yeah, so what it is, believe it or not, it's actually replacement about 80% of the actual sidewalk itself. There used to be ash trees very near that sidewalk, and there may have been some utilities that were installed. So we did send our engineering technician out, reviewed the sidewalk, checked cross slopes, stuff like that. This winter we'll be working to put together an actual plan in-house and then bid that out. So not an entire replacement. We are considering having an alternate to replace it all. To see what the difference in price is when it comes in.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, Brad, that didn't, that has nothing to do with your borrowing, but I just wanted him aware of that. Okay, any other questions about
There's
this?
no questions, and the action here would be to approve the parameters resolution, R11-2-24, for the sale of not to exceed $2,890,000 general obligation promissory notes.
All right, I'll move to approve what Greg just said.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution R11-2-24, issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $2,890,000. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10E, consider, discuss, act on ordinance O11-3-24, regulating temporary video boards. Aaron?
All right, thank you. The requested ordinance came about because in anticipation of the draft, we have started to receive requests for temporary video boards outside of the typical areas where you've seen them in the past. Typically, you've seen them certainly Holmgren Way, the bars, restaurants along there for Packer games. This is meant to try to get our arms around that, get ahead of it, be able to regulate those, make sure that the video boards are in appropriate locations, don't negatively impact neighbors, and really help facilitate enjoyable experience for draft attendees as well as residents. As it stands right now, the draft ordinance really restricts temporary video boards to the SE Sports Entertainment Zoning District, which is the historic location, the Titletown District, and the P Public Use zoning district of the village. P Public Use primarily so that we don't have any issues with our movies in the parks, things like that. So this is meant to provide those parameters such that if there ever is an issue with video boards for the draft, or after, for that matter, that we have an ability to point to something in our code book and say, this is what the rules are.
Okay. Any questions?
So the temporary board has to be removed within 48 hours, correct, after the time that they can have it there?
That's correct.
Okay, and then it's 7.5 feet, so how big is that about? Give me an estimate, like,
I forget what that was. That's a 50-inch, or no, larger than 50-inch TV, I believe it is. There was a rationale for that, and I believe it was 50-inch.
Okay.
Basically, we don't want to, penalize someone who has a TV outside. This is actually for those large video boards that are definitely not just for single use.
Are you talking LED ones?
LEDs or projector,
Okay.
correct.
okay, either or. Okay.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the ordinance regulating temporary video boards.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 011-3-24, regulating temporary video boards. Any other discussion?
Because the way I understand this, Aaron, and it's just to help you two guys right there to be able to manage this basically. So we're just helping you guys by giving you the parameters here so you can.
Correct. We were starting to get requests for video boards in some residential areas,
Yeah.
and in some areas where they're just not appropriate. So we want to make sure that we're going to get our arms around it in anticipation of the draft.
Perfect.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10F, consider, discuss, act on ordinance 011-1-24, amending enforcement of special event parking. Mr. Legal.
There's a request from basically the Department of Public Works and the Public Safety to take a look at our ordinance regulating the citation amount for no parking during Packer games and special events. At committee, we presented this and it was approved unanimously by the committee. Basically, the main purpose is that there's Public Works and Public Safety staff have seen people just deliberately violating the no parking signs, during Packer games, and that's really where the issue kind of comes from, is during Packer games. The fine is recommended was a little low, so the main purpose of these signs is again to alleviate traffic, primarily to and from Packer games. So the signs are meant there to not have obviously people parked all along those streets, to get the cars removed, and then obviously to help with the traffic flow. There are a couple examples that I was told from staff that more recently this has been happening, where they would people or parkers would park right there and look at the sign and be told they actually can't park there. And they would ask the staff, or in this particular case, a Public Works staff member, say, well, how much is the fine? And the driver would, they would say it was $50. The driver would say, all right, whatever, I'll pay it, and just walk away. So literally there's no deterrence whatsoever, when maybe if they parked further away, or they got back into the car and looked for parking, which kind of can be complicated or a headache during Packer games, that if you're seeing, $30, $40, $50 in lots and yards, then, well, why don't people just park at that sign and just pay the fine later, because you're basically paying the same thing. So in this situation, it would probably be more of a deterrent. What the sign would look like, how do we notify the parkers, it kind of remains to be seen. This is kind of the first step as to how we regulate this, and the request from staff and the recommendation would be we actually proposed $125, but the committee recommended that be bumped to $150 per violation. With that being said, we can certainly work with Public Works and how we develop new signs, but that is the recommendation, to bump this to $150 for an initial violation, in hopes that this would deter parkers from parking there, alleviate that heavy congested traffic area by preventing the cars from parking in those no parking zones.
So you're
Patrick,
saying,
I think,
Gary?
Gary,
I'm sorry who I stepped on. So you're saying they're gonna put up new signs
Not
with
necessarily.
the idea of posting no parking, and the fine will be $150?
There was a question at committee, if I believe, that
Right,
say,
that's
how will
why
we
I'm bringing
notify
it
the
up.
drivers? At this point in time, there might be other areas or other issues in the ordinance that we would look to maybe amend, rather than create a new sign, say no parking during Packer games at a $150 violation, and then if something happens in the future, then we just have to create new signs, right? So at this point, the signs would just stay the same. The goal is by staff is just leave the signs the same right now, enforce this throughout the Packer season, and then if signs need to be changed, we could kind of internally meet and discuss what the most efficient way of getting that notice to the parker. I've looked at other cities that have no parking signs in the state, primarily Miller Park and Camp Randall, and basically they essentially say no parking per event, and they'll list the ordinance. So whether that be we list the ordinance itself or the actual citation amount, it kind of remains to be seen at this point, or to be determined. But as far as this goes right now, effective, I guess, next week, that the parking citation would go up to $150, but the signs would remain the same for right now.
Okay. Yeah, I know I brought that up because, somehow we should be pointing them to, here's how much it's gonna cost you, just as a deterrent, somehow to be able to deter them more, because they're used to those no parking signs now, and we just leave the same no parking sign there. Guess what? They ain't gonna care until they finally get the ticket, and then they see it's 150. Well, they won't park there next time, but somebody else is gonna. So if there's some way we can get that word out, great.
What about doing like a tow away zone? That usually works for me. If I think, oh, my car might get towed, I'm not gonna risk it.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that. I was at the game one night, one of the officers, a car was parked, and he was calling the tow truck to come get him out of there. And did pull that car out of there. And I don't know how often they do that. Public safety at the end, do you have any feel for that? Or where they're parking, I suppose, maybe makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, we try to hold the towing of a car to limit that to where it's going to create a traffic hazard after the game. We try not to use a tow as a punishment. So I guess that's our philosophy with that. But yeah, I can echo what Patrick has been saying, is that, with the increase of costs of parking being $50 now around the stadium and our fine being $50, people are like, well, if I'm going to pay $50 either way, I might as well get a great parking spot, and not be in a lot across the street, easy in, easy out kind of thing. So we do tow, but like I said, it's limited to actual traffic hazards for post-game traffic flow.
Does the sign say subject to towing, or does it not? Because maybe if, like Kelly said, if that was on there, people are like, oh crap, I don't want to leave my car here. It might be gone when I come back.
No, it does not say anything about tow on the sign. It just says no parking day of Packers game.
Well, I guess Chris, I know you had something else you wanted to.
Yeah, the only thing I had to say is I don't think $150 is enough. I think it should be
No,
at
me neither.
$200.
Yep.
And still at $150, I mean, depending on where you're gonna park, it may be very well worth it just to park there for $150. I think it should go at least to 200. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Yeah, I'd already bumped it to 150.
And I don't care where you go with it, but I live or I should say, I represent the wards that have the most activity in the area. Sunday, I took a ride around while they were, after they were parking cars. The lots are full, except the Packer parking lot is half full when they bought all the homes on the south side or the north side of Morse Avenue. That lot was not full whatsoever. You people, this draft thing to me is blowing way out of proportion. There's going to be a lot of people here, yes, but some of the ridiculous things that are being talked about, and if you look at it realistically, I think there's plenty of room to park. I don't mind the fine. You raise the damn thing up to $500. Don't bother me. But it's the idea, some of the parking that the Packers own is not being utilized right now.
Well, but Gary, a lot of that parking too is all prepaid. That's all
I
prepaid.
don't care if
at
it's
the be-
prepaid or not. It's empty.
What, right, but that's the people, if they sell their tickets, they don't always sell the parking spot with it. They don't give them the parking spot with it. So-
Yeah, I'll just add real briefly, so obviously with the draft, it'll be slightly different in that the entire Lambeau Field lot is gonna be utilized within the draft campus. So the hundreds, if not thousands of parking spaces that are accommodating a Packer game day situation are not gonna be available.
You're talking Titletown too, aren't you?
I'm
Joe?
talking just all around surrounding Lambeau
Yeah,
Field.
I
Big
realize
lots
that,
And then the grass lots, 8, 9, and 10, or whatever they are. So those will not be available for the draft. So you will see a pretty substantial uptick in neighborhood parking in attendees for the draft itself. I will just note that there is a sticker on each of the signs that provides kind of a reference to code. And so whatever is decided, even if it's a short-term fix, we will probably need to look at referencing or updating those stickers until we update the signs. And I think the stickers were just there primarily to make sure that there's a updated reference to the fine and fee schedule or the fine schedule for the parking. So we will have to do that regardless of any changes that are made to the code to accommodate additional events at the stadium.
You know, your handicap signs have the 12 by 18 explaining all the handicap. Then on the bottom, they got a little 6 by 12 rider. That is something that could be added to these signs with that information on. You know, that ended up being like the handicap ones with that little rider on the bottom of the larger sign. That'd be kind of simple, really.
Well, I'll make the motion to recommend approval, but raising the amount to $200. And then I would just ask staff to keep us up to date going forward as to what you're gonna do as far as the signage and that. I'd rather have you guys dealing with that. We don't need to be dealing with that. You guys figure out what the
Second.
signage and all that has to look for.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Ashwaubenon ordinance number 011-1-24, except raising the amount to 200, not 150. So then would each one escalate by $25 then?
Right, the takeaway would be that the late payments, the increments would remain at $25.
Okay. Okay, does everybody understand the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, thank you. 10G, consider, discuss, act on resolution R 11-1-24 and ordinance 011-2-24, authorizing relocation of polling place for wards 9 and 10.
I can take it.
Okay, Patrick.
So our village clerk's office is requesting that the polling locations for wards 9 and 10 be moved from St. John's Lutheran Church to the Ashwaubenon Community Center for any upcoming election. Per statute, that the board can change the polling locations no earlier than 30 days prior to an election. So this is why the clerk wanted to bring this forward to the board tonight to have plenty of time to give notice to any voter, create new maps for voting polls, and to send any notice that might be necessary. And the reason for that is the clerk's office finds that it might be more efficient or is more efficient for her department and for the rest of the voting, I guess, election workers and staff for that matter, to move that to the community center from St. John's. I believe there's been a long history at St. John's Lutheran Church for your wards 9 and 10, so these would impact your voters. Right. But with plenty of time before any upcoming election, this would effectively be able to give plenty of notice to voters. So for efficiency purposes and for basic, I guess, just running the election in terms of where it might be more efficient for the voters, the clerk's office is requesting this to be changed, and it can be changed by adopting the ordinance and then the resolution.
Jay, do you have any concerns with it?
I do not. I looked at it. I also know that there's been some concerns, at St. John's of them maybe abiding by some of the laws correctly. I don't know, but there has been other issues with kind of consuming their church and that. So I kind of look at this, yeah, it's unfortunate it's moving out of the area, but especially with this election, I mean, I watched it, everybody's driving there anyhow. So they're gonna have to drive to the community center. the biggest issue is the communication, and I know letters are gonna go out and that to keep everybody up to date. What I might ask is that maybe when we have the first election here come March, is it gonna be March or April?
For sure, April, there may be a spring primary, which would take place in February.
February, okay. Maybe at that point, if St. John's would be agreeable, we just put a sign there by their driveway saying, hey, polling place has changed, go to the community center. But other than that, I get the efficiencies that we're gonna have. And yes, I will probably get some emails and some phone calls, but I think in the long run, I think it's probably the best thing because I know that St. John's has also had some issues with us coming in there as well.
And I'll add to that, Jay, we did reach out to, I guess, the property manager at St. John's Church. There was a consent, and granted, the board doesn't need to have consent by the property owner. It just needs to be kind of in a public place, right? But we thought that it would be just best practice, so to speak, to just kind of get that consent and be on, straight terms. So there wasn't any pushback necessarily from changing location. But like you said, Jay, being here with the general election, there was a little bit difficulty, I guess, with the St. John's location itself. So provided that the location change isn't impractical for voters of those wards, which this center wouldn't be, or the community center wouldn't be, then it can be approved by the board if so desired.
So there's already 4 wards that vote at the community center. This will make 6. Is there for sure gonna be room for everybody in there?
Yeah, I believe our village clerk's office spoke with, Rex, I think you spoke with Chris on that. I think everything seemed that there'd be enough space in the different rooms for each ward. So I think with just given the size of the building itself, again, it wouldn't be impractical for based on location, other kind of services, disability, handicap access, that to the best of my knowledge, that would be sufficient.
So what are they gonna do, split the big room? Run the
My understanding is that the original wards that are served at the community center will stay in the large room, and then the wards that were serviced at St. John's will move to the smaller room at the front of the community center.
Which would be about the same size as what St. John's is as well. So that's be about the same.
Where they actually vote, yeah, it's about the same size.
Correct.
Right, they vote in the kind of the back room in St. John's, correct.
There'll just have to be better signage, obviously, to make sure everybody's going to the right spot.
Yeah.
But that's easy to do.
Educate the dumb redhead here. What wards are voting there right now if you include the new one?
I think it's
1 and 2, 5 and 6, and then it'll be 9 and 10.
Yep.
The middle one was, thank you.
1 and 2,
5 and 6,
5 and 6, and,
9 and 10.
9 and 10, okay. Where's 11 and 12 voting?
School district office.
Where?
School district office on Griffiths.
Oh, okay.
And that just, I kind of looked at that. It's just not big enough.
No, it gets busy over there with just 11 and 12.
It's too small.
Yeah,
Okay.
Otherwise, that'd have been ideal, but it's
Yeah.
just too small.
yeah, and there's no other public facilities in your ward at all, unfortunately, that you could go to.
So
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 1-11-1-24 and ordinance O-1-11-2-24 authorizing relocation of polling place for wards 9 and 10.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution R11-1-24 and Ordinance O11-2-24. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. 10H, consider, discuss, act on Vibrant Spaces Grant for the Bandshell project at Clipstein Park.
So WEDC launched a Vibrant Space Grant pilot program in 2023. It's about communities that want to find matching funds to support placemakers. And the Bandshell at Clipstein Park is a great option for that. Another good option is there's no deterrent for larger communities like us. And we also have the matching funds that would come out of the TID district, and that was actually a positive thing for scores for applicants that did receive the funds. So There's not a lot of downside or deterrent for this application. The deadline is actually December 9th coming up. Working with Rex and their department, we have most of the application done. Basically just needed approval from the board to move forward with that and go from there. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Vibrant Spaces Grant for the Bandshell project at Clipstein Park. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. 10I, consider, discuss, act on draft Ashwaubenon Comprehensive Outdoor Rec Plan. Rex.
Well, this shortened up is just called the Corp, so that's how I'm going to be referring to it. Staff has been working on this. I think we started in June of this year, collecting surveys both online and in a series of 7 meet and greets at different special events and parks that we had lined up throughout the course of the summer. What the Corp is, it's basically a planning tool that our department uses to submit capital projects moving forward during each of the budget seasons. And so we've extended that out to a 10-year plan, basically. And what we do, it's not a fix-it plan. It's more of a like what new amenities are out there that our village residents would like to see within our community. And so we talk with them, we find out what they're liking, what they're using, and then what they would like to see. Are they looking at more trails? Are they looking at a new park? Are they looking at splash pads, that type of thing? There's all sorts of ideas that are out there. So then we put that all together in the plan. It talks a little bit about the population of Ashwaubenon, the makeup of that population, because that has a lot to do with the type of amenities that we're looking at doing, whether they're younger kids, whether they're seniors, the age groups. We put that into the plan, and then again, we use that as a planning tool. One of the things that is required to apply for any DNR grant is that we have a Corp plan, which needs to be reapproved every 5 years per the DNR. To apply for any grants, you need to have an active Corp plan. And the reason is there's a little bit of history. In the past, they used to have people applying for grants, very competitive, right? They'd apply for the grants, they were awarded a grant. People that had other projects were then subsequently told, no, we don't have any money for you. Those projects went away. And then after a year or two, the people that were awarded the grant said, meh, we're not going to do it anymore. Thanks anyway. So really that's kind of wasted money per se. So why they want the Corp done is they want to see that municipalities have a process that they go through, gathering that public input, and then that the village board or the city council or whatever type of government that municipality has is on board with the process that is listed, or with the projects that are listed, excuse me. That way, there's much less likely anyone pulls out of a project once funding is given or awarded to a particular municipality. So again, we've kind of vetted this at the last several park board meetings, made some changes. We've done it in-house. We had it done professionally a number of years ago, and really, we're kind of using the meat and bones of that and just updating it every 5 years with the new statistics from our community, as well as the projects and the input that we've received from our residents. So with that being said, Park Board did approve unanimously to forward this to the village board in its current form. And what I would be asking for tonight is then approval of the plan, which we would then enclose the approved minutes of our meeting tonight, put it in the back of the book, send it to the DNR, and we're good for another 5 years. I always put the caveat in the plan that this plan is never etched in stone. Every project that is in here still would go to the village board for final approval. So it's just a planning tool, not necessarily anything that is set in stone.
I think it's a really good plan, Rex. When I went through it, I looked at all the different parks and all the different things that are coming up. I was very interested to see how you're expanding that direction with adding new things in that, so, I'll make the motion to approve the plan and also that it would be submitted to the Wisconsin DNR.
Second, I agree. I think it's a great plan.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Ashwaubenon Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan and send to the DNR. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, everyone.
10J, consider, discuss, act on request to amend the village code to regulate performance standards for noise, vibration, external lighting, odor, particulate emissions, visible emissions, and hazardous pollutants.
I will take this one, Mary.
Okay,
So this item was requested at our last village board meeting by trustee Flukie to be placed on this agenda item, or on this agenda for discussion purposes. So tonight, we're not necessarily looking for formal action to adopt an ordinance, but if there is action given by the board, it's an action to direct staff to prepare something for future action by the village board. And so tonight, we're looking at a variety of different performance standards that have been found in other communities that have adopted ordinances related to performance standards, more particularly for industrial zone districts. But in this particular case, the sample code that was provided to you in your packet can be applicable to all zoning districts, so it doesn't necessarily have to pertain to industry alone. The performance standards that were provided will address issues and concerns that extend beyond public nuisances, because it's directly related to operational activities of the businesses that are conducting that work. So to kind of just hash over the items that are under review under these performance standards, the first one would be noise, and there's two thresholds. One for industrial producers, and then one for any other producer. So there may be commercial properties, commercial retail establishments that do create noise. They would be limited differently than an industrial producer, just because of the intensity that industrial producers may have. They have a higher threshold than a general commercial retail outlet would for the creation of noise. Now, from a noise standpoint, I do want to point out that it talks about octave and decibel levels. There would need to be a precision tool that the village would have to purchase in the event that this code would go into effect that would measure these ratings. We do not presently have a tool available to us that would do that effectively, that would in theory stand up in court. I understand there's applications that people can download on their phone, but those have not been measured and not precise measuring tools. They would not hold up in court. The other aspect of the proposed standards would be about vibration. So again, pretty simple concept. In order to evaluate whether or not an individual business or entity is violating the code, essentially a reasonable person would have to be standing essentially outside of the property that's producing the vibration, be able to sense it either by touch or feel, or see an object moving as a result of that vibration. The other aspect is external lighting. That's going to be a reference to our existing code as it relates to external lighting. So yes, businesses go through a site plan process. That site plan process identifies lighting, but businesses and operations change, and those changes don't necessarily elicit a site plan review. So they may add light fixtures because they're changing their external operations. As a result of that, this code would pick up some of those minor changes that don't necessitate a site plan review and approval. The other aspect are going to be related to odor, particulate emissions, and visible emissions. And the reason why I'm putting those together is that they all reference existing Wisconsin administrative code. So the point here is that we're not experts in odorous emissions, particulate emissions, or any other visible emissions. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources are our state experts. In fact, they are taking EPA standards and then deploying them through administrative code. So rather than creating our own code without expertise or even hiring expertise, let's use the standards that have already been created through either the EPA or the DNR, and then adopting them by reference within our own code. And that's effectively what those three areas are doing. And then those are emissions. The other final item would be a hazardous pollutant. And again, we would reference administrative code, natural resource administrative code, to set the standard of what that is. Now, a couple of quick things on things like particulates, either visible emissions or hazardous pollutants. Again, we do not necessarily have the expertise to evaluate and verify that violations may be occurring. So in the event that a complaint were to come in, we may, depending on the nature of the complaint and the situation, hire an expert to come in and evaluate and determine whether or not they have met or have broken the standards under that administrative code. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that by adopting this code, that myself or Will or Aaron, we may not have the expertise to evaluate whether or not an entity has violated the code or the administrative standard. We may need to have an expert come in and identify that because of the complexity and the specific nature of some of these violations. Now, in addition to that, it may not necessarily mean that the village has to initiate enforcement. What could happen is if there is a violation, let's say under subparagraph E, particulate emissions, we become aware of it, we refer the issue to the DNR and to the EPA. They've identified that a violation has occurred under administrative code. They could begin enforcement, and then we could issue citation in reference to our code because they have violated already that state code. So there could be some partnering then between different agencies to kind of create a stronger hand, if you will, for enforcement. So with that, there wasn't a whole lot of direction per se from the village board last meeting because it wasn't an agenda item. We wanted to put together a real brief synopsis of some performance standards, again, that we commonly see with other municipalities. So this reference code that was provided tonight, if you were to look into many other municipalities and what codes, standards they've had for industrial performance, you would find something very, very similar to what's being presented tonight. So with that, I guess I will take any questions or entertain discussion amongst the board and then seek direction from the board moving forward so we know where we need to go from here.
Joel, so you're saying that there's a lot of opportunities just going to the state, having somebody come in and look at whatever problem there is, and they take it over from there?
There may be, in particular, about some pretty egregious violations. Now, when we talk about things like odorous emissions, so smelly emissions, not necessarily dangerous, don't necessarily include particulates, things of that nature. The DNR has been a little reluctant to take on any enforcement in that regard. So by referencing it, if they're reluctant, but it's still a problem or a nuisance on our part, we would have 2 points of reference, our performance standards as well as our nuisance code that we could use to help enforce any type of malodorous type situations.
So if, just to clarify then, so if the DNR and EPA would not step in for one of those issues, then we could go back to our ordinance and have the performance standards that may be able to help, even though DNR and EPA say it doesn't meet our criteria. Is that correct? And then we could look at enforcing it?
Yeah, I don't know that they're gonna necessarily say it meets their criteria or not, but they may not they might not have any findings that suggest that there's an enforceable action to be taken. So that's where we could come in, and because we're more local, we're closer to the source, to the issue, we may have an opportunity then to do that enforcement.
So with the performance standards that we would put together, we'd be able to step up even though DNR and EPA doesn't meet their criteria, is what you're saying?
And again, this is going to complement to some degree the nuisance code that we presently have. It just hopefully provides a little bit more objective standards of performance, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It does not increase our enforcement capability, so that doesn't mean that we can shut down enterprises from operating. It just simply means that a citation may be issued more expeditiously versus going through some of the more chronic nuisance type issues that are present under our nuisance code.
The other question I have, this has been some issues in my ward. I've been having a lot of calls, and there's been different issues. So there's a group of residents, and there's a request from one of the residents that a citizen task force, if you'll put it at that, would be available to review and help out with the ordinances. Is there any chance to get the residents involved or reach out to them and get them involved in it as we go through the process?
And I think that's a board prerogative. If the board desires to have citizens be involved in the crafting of industrial or performance standards for that, that's certainly a board prerogative. I would caution a little bit because we only have certain capabilities within staff. So sometimes they may have a significant degree of expertise that we would not necessarily be able to deploy. So again, much like some of the code conditions here, we wouldn't necessarily have the tools or resources to evaluate whether or not the violation would occur. We would take the complaint, and then we would have to validate the complaint through an expert individual that could confirm that. So I would be a little cautious about that. And then I would just be cautious about, some of the issues that we've had from residents that live adjacent to the industrial park could be viewed as maybe targeting certain businesses. And I'd want to be careful that we're not viewed upon as doing selective enforcement or selective code writing to reflect some of the issues or concerns that are coming out of the industrial park.
One of the issues that I see is like, especially with noise, and that it's, where exactly do you do the measurement? Because we're getting noise violations blocks and blocks away from the industrial park. So are we doing, based on these standards, are we doing our measurements there where those houses are? Are we doing the measurements where, that, and which can make huge differences as far as what the violation is? So that's something I'd see. I don't know how you craft that into an ordinance, but I see that as being a problem with noise and vibration type of problems. Smell, maybe a little bit, but I don't think probably as much, because I think the smell probably just travels. So
Yeah.
I'm just bringing that up as I'm concerned, kind of looking at Will saying, okay, how are you gonna measure this stuff, and how are you gonna, I appreciate your challenges. So I don't know how, when we are looking to craft this, if there is some way that we can spend some time looking at that to see, okay, we get a complaint. Are we gonna go measure at that person's house? Are we gonna go measure at the corner of Ridge and Wabi, or where are we going to do this?
Yeah, so if under noise in particular, so an industrial district, it's by district. So you can create noise within the district, but once that noise leaves the district, then that's where you measure. So if you have a residential property that is 5 blocks away from the industrial district, you're still measuring at the boundaries of the overall district.
Of the district, okay.
For properties that are not industrially zoned, then it would be based on the premise. So you're measuring it at the premise boundaries of that property.
Okay.
The same thing would be for vibration. It's measured by premise, so it can't escape the premise.
Okay.
Light pollution is similar in that regard. Odor becomes a little bit challenging because, as you'd mentioned, it kind of extends beyond that. There's a lot of other mitigating factors that impact odor: wind, humidity, temperature, things of that nature. So for that one, it is based on the point of complaint, and then it's a determination of whether that complaint has been validated. When you look under the administrative code, there's some components to where an expert, if you will, or a staff person that's been designated with that expertise would go out, validate the complaint, and if it's found at that location, then it would be valid. Or if that individual expert can't validate the complaint, there is kind of an override, if you will, when so many, a percentage of households have determined that it's present. That would also indicate that it's also, in
How quickly are we able to respond to a complaint? Because obviously, like, let's say smell, and I'm sure, Will, you've run into this, you know, okay, it happens one, and then that you get out there the next day, and that's just because it's, are we doing anything so that we can maybe help the response time to be able to try to get on top of this, you know?
So part of a good effective, and I don't mean to interject for Will, but part of a good written code is just understanding the process of enforcement too. So in the event that there's, let's say, a vibration, and we go out, we get a complaint that there's a vibration, we go out and we validate the complaint, the vibration is occurring. We would then send, part of the process is, we don't issue a citation immediately, right? Send a notice of violation. They have so many days to correct. In the event that they don't correct it, then we validate that it hasn't been corrected. Then they get another notice. And then if it still hasn't been corrected at that point, then we work through some type of mitigation program with that entity to get into compliance.
Because my issue, I guess, Joel, isn't so much that as it is the vibrations happening right now. And guess what? Tomorrow it's not happening.
Yep. And I'd say we're pretty good. We kind of everyone kind of works together as a team as it relates to it. Will, Aaron, myself.
I just see it as being a challenge. And I don't know if when you're crafting this, I mean, I will make the motion to direct staff to prepare an ordinance for the village consideration, amending chapter 17, planning and zoning to incorporate performance standards as we've discussed. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. What Jay just said and Tracy seconded.
Yep.
Discussion.
I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I just think we should be really cautious with some of this stuff, especially the noise in there. Are we gonna exempt anything, like the airport? Cause a jet taking off is way louder than that. Same as smell of jet fuel, that's gonna be a noxious gas. So, like, we need to be thinking this through a little bit. And does this only include facilities with a physical address, or is this like the Village of Ashwaubenon Street Department cutting trees down because that chainsaw is gonna be louder than that allowed decibel? So I think we just need to like really, really dig into this. I agree, like this is a good thing, but we really should have multiple meetings on this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The other area, we tend to look at the industrial park over here.
Right.
But I have
There's a lot of
been
other
playing
areas.
pickleball down over there, and I'm sure Rex can attest to it. Sometimes our good friends just to the north down there at Georgia Pacific, it gets very, very smelly down in that area.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, but I do concur with Chris that, and that's the crafting of this.
Right.
And I'll trust you guys will take care of that.
Yeah, I mean, it is village-wide. I think it's just been, in the area that I live, it's been more prevalent now, and I'm sure there's issues in all the different wards, noise, odor, vibration, whatever the heck it is. The only thing I would ask then, if we're not real excited about getting a citizen task force together, which, fine, that we keep in touch with those people that have been really involved with this, and it's been impacting them. So as we move through the process, let them know, keep them updated on where we're going and what the standards will be, just so they understand. And maybe there's someone else in some of the other wards that has some concerns on it too, that we can add them to that mailing list and just keep them in the loop as well.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns?
I think some of this is just common sense.
Well, you know, it's like Jay said, I mean, it's gonna be tough to craft this because there's a lot of unknowns and what ifs and so.
Yeah, and it seems like common sense, Gary, that we would have, the businesses and industries and everybody, trying not to do it, but it's been some issues, so I think I'm really excited that staff is gonna do some work on it, because it's really impacted the neighborhood that I'm in.
We know we got a problem down in your neighborhood,
Right.
Terry,
Tracy.
Tracy. But I
Thanks,
know the
Fred.
staff I know the staff is working on this, and they've been following up on it.
Absolutely, they have.
It's the idea of the company doing something about it, which it takes time to do that. You just can't change something immediately, and hopefully they can come to a solution soon. But I know Will and the boys are doing all they can to try and help that.
Oh,
And
and they
they are-
absolutely are, Gary. No one's saying they aren't. It's just, it's been a long haul. And I think,
It
I'm
has
glad
been a
that
long
the
haul.
standards will be looked at, and I think staff's done a good job on it. I have no concern with that.
You know, I drive through there once in a while, and I purposely roll my window down just to smell it, and
So I just want to
it's
kind of
just a-
bring the board
Yes.
back a little bit. So we're discussing an ordinance
Right.
collectively, right? And
Exactly.
the zoning ordinance and zoning amendment. So any particular, as Joel mentioned earlier, any particular property owner really isn't discussed here whatsoever.
Nope.
So I just, this is going to apply to all businesses, residents across the board, you know, in the village. And we do have a noise ordinance right now that has certain decibel levels. There are exceptions to it and everything. So just a reminder to the
Right.
board that we're not speaking about anyone in particular.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to direct staff to amend village code for performance standards. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. 10K, consider, discuss, act on request from Ashwaubenon School District to provide funding support for wayfinding and community pool signage on district campus. Joel?
Yep, thank you, Mary. So the school district has been working with Elevate 97 to install some additional signage around the high school campus, which includes the Performing Arts Center, the community pool, as well as the high school and field house. Part of that signage is not only signage to the various different aspects of the campus, such as this is the community pool or this is the Performing Arts Center, but some additional wayfinding signage around the campus. Seeing that the village participates in the programming and the operational aspects of both the pool and the Performing Arts Center, the district had requested some financial assistance for the signage that is being provided on the campus. The overall cost of the signage was just over $28,000, and the district is asking for about a third of that from the village. This is a special request. This is not something that the village has been obligated to provide. It was just simply, hey, these are programming space that the village utilizes. Would you be able to financially support us in this effort in providing the wayfinding signage? And so any dollar amount would be certainly appreciated by the district.
I think it's a good idea. It's hard to find where to park there, and to have more signage, I think, is a thing. And then the public facilities, you have the PAC, you have the pool. There's different rooms in the high school, I'm sure, that are used by the public as well. So I have no issue with the $9,500 to help share in the cost for the signage.
The only issue I have is the principal way, because I know that was an idea that came from the alumni. And then when it got presented back, it just didn't turn out the way that we felt. And also, I know that the current administration up there, as well as some of the people that would be on here, were not in favor of it.
My understanding is
They
that
changed it.
that has changed.
Yeah, that
That's right.
changed.
That has
Correct.
been
It will
pulled.
not be
Yes.
principal way.
Jaguar Way or something.
Jaguar Way.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, because I thought it had changed, but in the packet here it hadn't.
And that's not part of the total cost, that's not part of ours, right? Or that'd be separate, because the Alumni Association, I think, is still paying for that.
No, we are
Oh,
not,
they aren't? Oh, I'm sorry.
no.
Okay.
Really, I personally, I feel if the school district come up with this idea, I think they should pay for the whole thing. I mean, yes, we do co-work with them on some things, but they're the ones that are benefiting by it.
Well, the one thing I have to say is that when you're coming down Ridge Road, the signage for the Performing Arts Center is on the south side of the building. So until you get to Anderson Drive, you can't even see that there's a performing arts center there.
I agree. I noticed that
So,
myself.
you know, if we have some directional signage, you know, maybe we'll be asking the school district to help us too.
Can they put the community center on there too? I know that was one thing they said, like an arrow on one of them saying community center that way. Cause that probably gets confused, I think, at times too.
I don't think that's not, I don't think.
I'm not sure what sign that would be, but I can certainly ask.
Okay. I thought it was something I saw in here, but maybe not.
Yeah, I thought, well, there's community pool, yeah, but not the community.
Okay, center, okay.
Just verify to see where those directional signs are, that if there's one on, let's say,
Would
Anderson.
be appropriate, okay.
You know, I agree with Gary. I mean, if you look at all this signage, it's kind of like the signage we have around our village buildings and that. I mean, as much as we do a lot of things in conjunction with each other, a lot of this signage in here is just, I mean, we don't go to them to pay for our sign out here or to point us in. I mean, I guess I don't have a problem with the PAC because that's joint. But,
Pool's joint too.
and the pool. But beyond that, I kind of go,
You know, we built all that for the purpose of the school.
Yeah.
You know, even though it's joint with the public and the school, but it was for the schools more use. So, you know, I just think, let them pay for all of it.
Yeah, again, this item was not budgeted. This was a special request by the district, so their request was a third of the cost. If you want to provide that, you're welcome to do that. If you want to provide less than that or none of that, again, that's up to you. It was a request by the district, special request, recognizing it was outside of your budget, and it's certainly your prerogative to.
Let me ask this, could we, I don't feel like I want us to just say 100% no, because we do want to, I mean, we're in a partnership with them. I would like to go back to them and say, okay, guys, what's it costing for the PAC signage and for the community pool signage? I don't know that we should be paying for the other signage. I think I would like to just take this back to them and have them give us, what is that, what's the cost of that? And have that come back to us so then we could then evaluate, because they're getting some advantage out of that too, but, you know, maybe that's something that I would be a little more interested in paying something for.
All
Well,
right, let's just deny it right now and get that information.
Well, the signage for the community pool, so those would be the letters on the wall face.
Right.
Are $4,849.70. The two wall signs for the Performance Arts Center are $5,337. So that $9,500
Is just about dead on it.
paying for those two signs.
All right. And I guess I'm okay with it. I guess I'll make the motion that, yeah, we approve the 9,500. Greg, can you do some magic to come up with $9,500 before I make this motion?
How are you approving this, Jay?
The two signs, the signage that Joel actually had the cost of those two,
Yeah.
of the signage for the PAC and the community pool.
Oh,
And by adding them together, it's actually a little more than $9,500. So I'm gonna make the motion that, yeah, we approve the $9,500.
95, okay, I'll run.
Okay, is that a second, Gary?
Yep, I'll do the second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the $9,500 expenditure for the signage. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, number 11, items for next agenda. If you have anything, give the office a call. 12, closed session items. During the meeting, the village board of the Village of Ashwaubenon may convene into closed session pursuant to A and B, and item number 12.
We are in a partnership.
I need a motion to go into closed session.
So move. Second?
Motion and a second to go into closed session. Roll call, please.
President Kratowski,
Yes.
Trustee Surveys,
Yes.
Trustee Paul,
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
They're absent, Trustee Atkinson,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Trustee Flukie.
Yes.
Okay, we're in closed session. Thank you.